You guys are, this film is about the moon and the landing. Are the stars big and bright?
Well, deep in the heart of Texas, they are. I can't speak for how they look actually out there in space around the moon. They're probably not as big and bright as they are here in Texas. So I think you still got a solid claim on that, I think.
Just conspiracy theory here to start with. Why is it in all space movies there are no stars in the shots?
This is actually a very easy question to answer. When you are on the moon, it is extremely bright. There is no atmosphere to filter the sunlight, and so you have to stop the camera down, stop the lens down, so that you don't overexpose the picture. And when you do that, the fainter objects, like stars, go away. You can actually see this in your own life with your own camera. Stop down and just watch different points of light which are not as bright actually just go away. The stars are there, and the astronauts actually commented on the stars when they were on the surface. But in pictures, just the photographic demands of trying to expose on the moon, which is many stops brighter, because it's like being in Santa Fe. It's just the light is so bright, that there's just no way to see them photographically.
Very cool. To kind of jump into the film, one of the elements, obviously, we talked to the other guys, and I talked to you guys on the phone about, was the amount of materials you guys found and created, obviously, and photoshopped. When you decided, okay, we're going to do this after this amount of period of time, was there a specific part or material that, okay, this means we can do it, that just came out exactly the way you wanted? Was it a Photoshop that just fit, or was there a moment where we've got this classified item and it fits exactly what we're trying to do?
No. I mean, I think we looked at so many authentic documents to see what we would need, and to determine what it would take to reproduce false versions of these. And I mean, David is extraordinary with his facility with the tools, the technological tools to be able to do these things. That was never really the question. The question was how long it would take, and determining what we would have access to for the underlying photographs. What NASA could, all these public domain pictures that we could draw from. But I have to say, and I mean, some of the times when David and I would laugh the most when we were making this film was when we would try a particular Photoshop. We'd try to put, Mr. Pine's head on somebody's body, and it would not work at all. And it was so funny. I mean, not Mr. Pine, but the result was incredibly funny. We would just laugh, and I wish we saved some of these because they were so ludicrously bad that it was almost sort of the most entertaining part of it. But that would tell you then what you needed to do. It meant you needed a better source picture, one where the shadows worked and all this stuff. But once we'd done a few of those, once we had a couple of those under our belts, it was pretty obvious that with enough time, you'd be able to dial it in. I went to Don Hanna's, our star of the movie, Don Hanna. I went to his house and literally sorted through, I don't know, it was like 4 large plastic bins, thousands of photographs, looking for anything that might be useful. And I put those all in the car and went back to LA, and we scanned them, every single one of them. So we had a library of photographs, and then we could say, okay, now we need a picture of Bo with Buzz Aldrin, and we'd find the underlying picture, and then we go look into the pictures that we took from Don's house, and just would look and try. So it was just time consuming from a logistic point of view, but technologically the basics were there, and as I'm sure David will tell you, I mean, it's a little frightening how, with just a little bit of elbow grease, just how, again, easy is the wrong word, but how possible it is to fake this stuff.
Yeah, I will say there's 2 aspects to the subject of the photos. One, of course, yes, it's discouragingly easy to simulate and to fake visual evidence. It used to be, before the digital era, if you saw a photo, basically that was truth, and seeing is believing. That's not the case anymore, not by the longest shot. And it's going to extend now into the video world, where the manipulation of video imagery in real time being able to replace somebody's head on somebody's body in what would supposedly or allegedly be a live video shot is because we already have motion capture now, of course, which essentially does that. There will be nothing that you can rely on. And in today's world, where everything is being questioned, the necessity to having a common set of fact on which that we can conduct the commerce of our lives that's everything. I mean, since the beginning of time, it's been based on the ability to be able to believe in something in common. And now there are forces at work that are actively seeking to destroy our ability to have things in common that we agree on and that we believe in. And this movie sort of contributes to that discussion, I'll say. The other aspect of the photos, and to answer your question, was that, you know, when you get into a movie, you're almost waiting for the moment at which you are relieved to discover that you cannot do it. Because you know that the journey you're about to take is going to be very long and very hard. So the more photographs that we produced and the more archival material that we were able to make and to show ourselves that it was going to work, the more discouraging it got, because it became clear that we were going to actually have to go through with this, and because it seemed too interesting once it would be done. But fortunately, we persevered.
And now, I'll add one thing about the pictures. You know, we cut this film very much like a regular documentary, right? So you had all these interviews, and then we would start, massaging it and sort of creating sequences and trying to determine how to tell the story. And many of the pictures, the demand for a lot of these pictures came out of the things that our actors would say. Don would say something, Robert Pine would say something, or he would say it in a certain way, and that would go, oh, well, the way he said that, it'd be really great to see a picture of, Congressman Polarin and Bo on a boat, right? Okay, that's another 2 weeks' work. It was the things that the actors said and how they said it, which would inform, how then you told the story visually and what you needed and what you could sort of go for. So that was, and then the documents, all these CIA memos and telegrams and torn pictures and everything. A lot of that's incredibly low tech. You would find a form. You find an actual memo in the National Archives saying that Haig wrote to somebody, and you would copy that memo, and then in Photoshop wipe out the text, and then go buy an actual manual typewriter from that period. Print that paper, put it through the thing, type your own thing, and then rephotograph that so it had texture, which isn't difficult per se. It's just time consuming. And if something needs to be aged, if something looks too clean, you could either do that by hand, or more often than not, David would in Photoshop digitally meticulously cut out little edges, very tiny things, just so that when your eye sees it, it looks like it's kind of been through the ringer, and that would take 2 hours. So.
It was very.
Yeah.
It was very handcrafted in that regard. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that the next film will just be straight dialogue, 2 people in a room, with no supporting material.
Can you, David, you might want to be answering this question especially. Can you talk about the different types of footage you're going through, the old footage of what you guys originally shot on, how to edit that, and just the whole editing process in that level? I mean, that seems like another beast unto itself.
It's, again, in my other life as a film editor, and I've been doing this for a number of years now, we've seen in the past, 10 or 15 years, this transition from, film to digital capture. And of course, I cut many music videos and TV commercials and, films as well. So what you end up encountering today is a great multitude of formats and forms and medium, and they all have to get brought into the Avid and dealt with somehow. And whether it's low-tech video or whether it's 35mm film or whether it's VistaVision, whatever it is, that's the experience I've had in as an editor, is in dealing with all that. We shot the original short film in 16mm, and then we shot the interviews digitally. And then we also shot Super 8 for archival stuff. And then we went back and shot new 16mm, which wasn't easy because the stocks that were available 25 years ago are no longer available. So we had to bring that in and simulate that as well. And then just sort of put it all together into an organic piece. And I think it's the ability to understand that having a certain mastery, you hope, over the technical aspects of the medium, the tools themselves, because unless you know what things do, you can't make them do them for you. So that was what we had to, that was a big, unlike you shoot a regular movie, you just put the film on the camera and you have one medium and that's basically it. In this case, it was a multiplicity of mediums, all working together, and that included, stills and documents and, digital medium and film, emulsion-based, photography as well. So it was a lot to put together.
When you guys had to do the 16 millimeter reshoots, I think Don brought this up. You guys went back to the desert. You're dragging these older gentlemen, Don and Jeff, into the desert again. Like what? Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, we had to redo and add additional footage of them in the 1973 part of the story. But of course, they had aged a score in 5 years, and fortunately, though, they were all fit and trim and slipped right back into their flight suits. But we were doing some things where they were, falling down hillsides and clambering over, props and stuff. And, I didn't hear any creaking in my ears, but, I don't think it was quite as nimble a situation. But they were all fantastic, and they were all game to do it. And we had to, employ some tricks and makeup to disguise some of the aging. But remarkably, they just got right back into the physical texture of what they were doing before. I mean, it was actually fairly remarkable. And we did all of the voiceover recording and all of the ADR on location to get this very, organic sound. And it was really remarkable to go back out to that location and see it essentially unchanged, of course, and still pristine after 25 years.
And a lot of movies.
And a lot of movies that are shot there. So, yeah. How
nostalgic has this process been for you two? I mean, obviously, you guys have been busy since then, since the original short. How much?
Listen, it's always great to get back together with good friends. I'm not a remember when type. I'm always looking for something new to do, and this was new, and it's in a very real way. But it's fantastic to be able to stay in touch with people, through your work as well, and to create something new with them.
Yeah, I'll just say that. I mean, this movie really is people on this film are like a family, and I know it's such a huge cliche to say that, but you're talking about 25, almost 30 years with many of these people. Don and Jeff McVeigh, who actually lives here in Texas now, and Warren Farina, those guys who played the astronauts, and many of the crew members and stuff. These are people who, were in the desert with us, 25, 30 years ago, and we've all stayed friends, and in a way the landing has never really gone away because these people really are a family. And then we get to add more people to that family. Some people like Robert Pine, who we've known for years and years and years, so he's perfect, natural, wonderful fit for the landing family, and as many others. So yeah, I mean, it's nostalgia is not the right word because it's sort of like growing old with your family around you, and it's just the most natural, great thing in the world,
Let's jump into Texas. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Jeff. I mean, he's literally from these roads and these streets.
Yep.
What's it mean to bring it to a festival here in Austin, but also a writers' festival, a festival that looks at the story, and this whole movie is about the crazy story you guys came up with?
Right. So the first part of that is Jeff. Jeff has been one of the most dedicated people on this project for a long time, and he actually was in the Air Force. He was part of the pararescue squads that trained for Apollo-Soyuz, and as a recovery diver. So he has an intimate connection with that. His roots are very much Texas, and Dave and I are from Dallas, so it was obviously. That was something we sort of shared in common and were able to trade upon. And I've forgotten the second part of your question altogether. Bring it to the Writers' Festival in Austin. Yes. When you go to a lot of festivals, each festival has its own sort of thing. Sort of lesser festivals don't really have an identity, but the good ones really sort of focus on one thing and allow you to sort of dial in. The Austin Film Festival is probably the best festival I've been to for understanding its own identity and for really being committed to what it is. And as a writers' festival, I mean, you feel that walking around. I mean, you go to the panels and they're packed full of incredibly enthusiastic people, incredible writers from the entire. You see people who look like they just got out of 8th grade, and then you see the guy who's been around the block, and they all have something to contribute, and they all throw in together, and you're just walking around outside here. I mean, you can feel it. I mean, you can feel that, and I think Austin, as a festival, has done an extraordinary job in really making sure people understand what this festival is and making it a participatory event, as opposed to just going to see your movie and hanging out and hoping everybody likes your movie and then getting on a plane and going home. That's not what this is at all. It breeds it's a real fraternity or sorority. And you feel that, and so I mean, Austin is absolutely incredible, the film festival and the city, because it's something that really is. It's got so much heart. I mean, you can feel it.
I think it's poignant that you guys got to screen at the Bethel Hall, which is in a church. It's its own unique environment all to itself. But I was blown away by your all's reaction to the presentation. Can y'all talk about what you felt about it? Because those are some strong words.
Yeah, well, we've screened, of course, in some terrific festivals around the country, East Coast, West Coast, and now here, of course. I wasn't sure what to expect when the festival told us that we were screening in Bethel. I'd never seen the hall, and when you think about a film being screened in a church setting, you wonder, well, what's that going to be like? And I mean, it sounded kind of cool, but when we got in there and saw what the situation was, and saw how remarkable the presentation was, the projection and the sound, it was bright, it was crystal clear, and the sound, the acoustics in the room created this really warm, sort of enveloping feel for the sound. The music texture was defined, but it had a sort of a real warmth to it, and the same with the effects and the dialogue. It was, I think, quite literally the best that the film has ever been presented anywhere, without qualification. I mean, this is in theaters with the most recent 5.1 sound and projection technology that is SEMPTE approved. This was the best, and it tells you a lot about the festival staff and what their commitment is, and their commitment means their commitment is to cinema. Their commitment is to the craft, not to the superficial trappings of people walking around doing a lot of badge sniffing. In this case, you feel like they're really here to sniff your movie and to make sure that your movie gets shown in a way that is as good as possible. And as a filmmaker, you appreciate that because you put a lot of work in it and you want it to come off well. And Austin has clearly shown a commitment to doing that.
You guys brought up the music. I think the music is extremely important to this film. I think you guys pinpoint certain songs to hit just beautifully in the film. Talk about, I mean, obviously licensing is one issue, but fitting it into the structure of the story. How much fun was that?
It was a living hell. It was not fun at all. You mentioned licensing, which is something that really ought to be considered. It probably would be banned under the Fourth Amendment. It is cruel and unusual, the whole process of licensing songs for movies.
Costly.
If you don't have any money, that's when it gets doubly cruel and unusual, because the people who own the rights, you have the publication rights, the sync rights, and then the master. So the sync rights is basically money goes to the songwriter, and the master goes to the artist and the producer who actually, for the actual recording itself. The people who own these rights, Sony, Universal, all these people, they will work with you, right? They know that you're not, Amblin or Fox, and so but they want their music out there, so they will work with you. But the process of negotiating those rates is excruciating because nobody else wants to know that they're getting less than anybody else. So it's a most favored nations situation. But if you have, we have 6, 7 songs in the movie, so you have to go to 2 different people for each song and promise them, the other guy's not going to get more than you are. All this paper has to be shuffled, and these people who are licensing these songs, they're licensing, these thousands of requests in any given week all over the world. If a hotel lobby in Dubai wants to play, Mamas and Papas songs, they got to license that, right? So you're a little fish. So it takes an extraordinary amount of time, and then unexpected things happen. For the song San Francisco, which, as you know, is played almost continually in the movie. We got the publishing rights very, very easily, but the master recording was problematic for reasons I won't go into here, although it's a fantastic story. If you ask me after this interview, I'll tell you. So the bottom line is we had to go and record our own. So we went in and into the exact same studio, East West Studios in Hollywood, in the exact same room with the exact same mics that Lou Adler and John Phillips recorded the original Scott McKenzie recording back in '68. And Brian Carr. Brian Cook was our DP on the first 16 millimeter. Brian Carr, our composer, also produced that new recording of San Francisco. And Brian has composed on Family Guy for years and years and years, actually produced a lot of the sound alikes that you hear on Family Guy. So he was the perfect guy to also produce this song. And just did an extraordinary job with an incredible LA band called King Washington, who went in there and did it. Fantastic job. It was really incredible. But as far as the other songs, as David is fond of saying, these songs are, a main line right into the emotional artery. And when you're trying to make a film that's not, 17 hours long, sometimes you need shorthand to sort of help the audience go, okay, I know what this is. And that's one reason why you hear a lot of the same songs in movies. But it's also an opportunity, to put people in a place and a time and an emotional state that is instantly recognizable and helps you communicate what that is very, very quickly. So, you just go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs trying these things out and seeing what fits and then how they fit in the big picture and how they fit in the small picture. And,
there's different ways. There's different ways to approach songs in movies, of course, and a lot of times, because I've done so many romantic comedies in Russia, ironically, but the fact that pop songs make have so many appearances in romantic comedies, again, it's no accident. It's a little bit like macaroni and cheese. It's supposed to be comfort food, and you're supposed to. Again, it's not an accident that you hear "brown-eyed girl" all the time, for example, right? Because all you're trying to do is create an emotional reaction. And when somebody says, "Oh, that movie had a great soundtrack," what they really are saying is, "Wow, those are all songs I loved." Yeah. And there's a reason why. And there's other movies have great soundtracks. Maybe they're a little bit more esoteric, or maybe they're trying to do a little bit something different, and that's fine, and that's great. So you walk a line between being, cliche and also being emotionally effective. So if you play a Dr. John song, as we do, say in the movie, immediately you can see people's heads start moving. You can see them start bopping. You can see them start rocking out because they're enjoying that song, and it connects very directly with the theme of the scene as well. So you're trying to evoke an immediate emotional response, and song selection is a lot about that, and about being surprising as well. So when we have an astronaut in the desert, and he's reminiscing about being with his wife, and he starts dancing, and you're hearing Nat King Cole, that's an incongruous image to see an astronaut in a flight suit in the desert waltzing while Stardust plays. So you look for those little, consonant, appearances of music as well, to set it off. The contrast is what works.
I found out from the last interview that when you guys are at screenings, you have a specific question you ask the audience to open up the conversation. Do you mind if I ask what that question is and how important the reaction is to you right then in that moment?
I think that the answer to the question is probably the heart of the project, and the question is, how many of you people believed this was real? and we get a fair number of hands that go up and who say they believed it was real. And then you have the other people who you can see from up on stage just sitting there a bit sheepishly, who did not believe it was real but are too embarrassed to raise their hand, or who did believe it was real. I'm sorry, who are too embarrassed to raise their hands because you don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit that you were tricked. And that's what the movie, I think, in many ways is most about, is our ability to relate to fiction and truth in narrative. Because today, everything is narrative, everything is story. You know, the narratives that come out of government, out of the White House, out of the president, it's all about whether or not you are able to believe or not believe, and how you're able to synthesize that into the world that you live in. And the movie asks the question of whether or not it's reasonable to believe anything at all anymore. And so when we find out how many people did or did not believe that what they saw was real, we find out a little bit more about the culture in which we live. And we hope certainly that the movie will encourage people to ask the second layer and the third layer of questions whenever you do see something, because nowadays nothing can be taken for granted, not a thing. And you have to be discriminating, and you have to apply a reasonable amount of critical thought to be able to navigate the world accurately.
Do you mind if I ask what you felt from the audience here in Austin, what their reaction to it was?
Every audience is different. This audience in Austin seemed to be extraordinarily glued into what was happening, and extraordinarily high concentration. The movie throws a lot of information at you very, very quickly, and moves on to the next thing, and moves on to the next thing, moves on to the next thing. And if you wander, you could easily miss something sort of critical. And I got the impression that the Austin audience very early on understood that about the movie and just was dialed in. And that didn't break until, it was clear that the movie was over and the credits started rolling. And then they kind of go, oh, okay. And had marvelous ovation. So I thought, that to me, this particular audience was sort of a studious sort of thing. Because you can tell, if it's sitting at the back of the theater, you can see what an audience is doing, right? So if they don't move the entire time, it's usually because they are absolutely dedicated. If you start seeing people kind of shift or doing this or the little, looking at your phone, then you think you may have lost them. I didn't get that sense last night. I mean, everybody was absolutely ramrod straight right across, and then the occasional kind of, lean forward, which is always great too. I love that. So I thought they were fantastic. And then, it's going to be interesting to see on Wednesday night at the Alamo Drafthouse Village, to see if that crowd is a little different. I mean, again, everyone's different, and I always stand at the back, chewing my nails and living and dying with every little line,
Now that you guys are back in Texas, is there anything you're going to be able to do here in Austin, and then right after this festival wraps, is there anything you get to do right after that?
Well, we're going to take an opportunity on Monday. Don, Hannah, and David and I, as you know, are NASA space freaks from way back. Shocking. Right. So Monday we're going actually to Johnson Space Center, and we're going to do the Level 9 tour, the sort of the one where they take you really, really behind the scenes. So we're going to be geeking out for that whole thing. And then we're having a barbecue this afternoon down at Lake Travis, and just enjoying everything Austin has to offer. I mean, Don last night, hit 6th Street and saw somebody named Vaughn. I don't know exactly, probably not Vaughn Monroe from the 40s, but probably, somebody. I mean, Austin is, you can't walk out the door without, just being confronted with something incredible and amazing, and it's just great to be back in Texas, and I'm just soaking it all in. I mean, it's fantastic.
Very nice, guys. Kind of last question I've got to ask. How do you follow this up? What are you guys working on, either obviously separately, but is there any hopes to do anything else together?
Yeah, certainly. We have several stories that we've developed and that we're trying to put together now in the wake of the landing. First, get some sleep, because there hasn't been a lot of that recently. And I'm in the middle of editing a 21-episode TV series right now as well. So between paying the bills and and recovering from this entire effort, absolutely, we have again a number of things that we're really, really moving on. So hopefully there'll be more coming soon, and we'll be back.
Well, guys, I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to get to know you guys over this time. And like I said earlier, I think this is my favorite film of the festival. I was shocked and blown away, and I was one of those people like, what the hell is going on?
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. That's very gratifying.
Thanks, guys.